Hi everyone, Badthany Backtano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it is time for a review of the new Thundercat album, It Is What It Is. This is the latest full-length LP from singer, songwriter, bass virtuoso, Thundercat. It is Thundercat's fourth full-length LP and comes several years after what I think is his most popular and most widely acclaimed album, Drunk, which for me was another album in the Thundercat discography that featured great playing, sharp humor, interesting song ideas, but was hindered ultimately by the weak production and sound quality that made Apocalypse such a disappointing listen. Not to mention the numerous tracks off of this record that just felt underwritten, like filler. However, I did go into It Is What It Is with higher hopes, as this seemed to be a trimmer album, trimmer track list, with an impressive and eccentric list of featured guests. And on top of that, there were at least a few teaser tracks that I thought were especially good. Now, aesthetically, the sound of this record isn't that much different than the usual blend of sounds and influences that have gone into Thundercat's previous LPs. It is a spacey and psychedelic fusion of jazz, soul, and funk, with some very good bass lines. The problem, though, is once again the production and the mixing leave a lot to be desired. The beats and grooves on many of these tracks are so faint, a little muddy, not a whole lot of punch. Meanwhile, the vocals are so soaked in reverb to overcompensate for the fact that Thundercat's falsetto is not the best. Also, the way the instrumentation is balanced on some of these tracks leads to them sounding needlessly tangled or noisy, like on the track How Sway or even Interstellar Love, which, mind you, is a track on this record I want to love. I want to love this track. It's Thundercat skillfully playing against some smooth sax and aggressive jazz fusion drumming. This is the kind of instrumental palette and musical chemistry I've been dying to hear on a Thundercat album, but the drums sound terrible. There are a few points of this track where the mix starts sounding like it's clipping, which is a terrible sound to hear when you are trying to convey, I don't know, this intergalactic jazz space vibe. Then there are tracks on this LP like Funny Thing, which almost suffer from the opposite issue, where the beat and synths and vocals are far too thin, hollow, and rudimentary to really make much of an impact. I have similar issues with the track Unrequited Love, where the song's very scratchy hi-hats and stiff kick snare pattern don't do much for the excellently voiced bass lines and lavish layers of strings on top of them. Also, while this record is on the shorter side, it's still packed with a lot of very short and inconsequential songs that are kinda hard to forgive when the more robust tracks on here are a little unsatisfying too. The track Overseas kicks off nicely enough, has one of the better chord progressions on the entire record, but it devolves into this kind of silly tongue-in-cheek novelty song about getting head on an airplane, with rapper and comedian Zach Fox popping into the mix as an airline pilot over the intercom, which didn't go over as hilariously as I hoped it would. The song How I Feel is a cool transitional moment in the track list, but would I have enjoyed this more if it extended into something a bit more substantive? Maybe. Meanwhile, the funny lyrics on Miguel's Happy Dance are just about the only thing keeping this track from being a total loss, as the song itself is pretty forgettable and sounds like something Thundercat has written already. However, I'm not entirely against the inclusion of Existential Dread in the track list here, as it sounds like a very cool intro to the closing track, the title track of the album, which I would like to use as a jump-off point to say that, you know what, there are actually some great highlights on this LP. It's not all bad or disappointing. Most of the tracks on this LP, I would say, range from decent but needs improvement to great. The track I Love Louis Cole is a tribute to multi-instrumentalist wizard Louis Cole, who is featured on the song as well. There is also an amazing finale to the song with this descending chord progression with the very punchy and fast instrumentation in the background. It sounds like the intro theme to an amazing adventure anime. The track Black QUALLS, featuring Steve Lacy, Steve Arrington, and Childish Gambino, is a fantastic combination of soul and funk, with some sweet vocal harmonies, one of Thundercat's most expressive bass lines ever, as well as some psychedelic synths and strings thickening up the back end. Not to mention each guest feature is better than the one before it. We then get Dragon Ball DURAG, And the track is about the most unsexy thing you can imagine, with mentions of video games and comics and having cat hair all over you, but you know, still smashing in your Dragon Ball DURAG. The track King of the Hill, meanwhile, is a much moodier piece with some chilling electric piano on the intro, which leads into a song about leading a hedonistic life, chasing after a lot of thrills and the costs that come with that. And the closing track is a wonderfully sad and dramatic moment on the record, where Thundercat gives one of his most intimate vocal performances. Even if it's couched in the same spacey and somewhat muddy production a lot of the other tracks here are too. Because it is a great song with a fantastic chord progression, very expressive bass playing and phrasing from Thundercat. On top of it, I think the barren wasteland wind blowing in the background does add a lot. I should mention the track Fair Chance, which I thought could have been better, but really only because Little B's feature was so awkward. Other than that, I thought Thundercat's vocals, his compositional edge on this track, as well as Ty Dolla $ign's appearance too, all worked together really cohesively. Didn't really dig the fact that Little B decided to sing on this one in such an out there way, but it is what it is, I guess. When it comes to Lil B, expect the unexpected, and whatever he gives you, you most likely should use it. So despite my complaints, and I do have complaints about this record, I still found it to be a likable album. It just suffers from a lot of the same issues that Thundercat's previous LPs have, though I imagine at this point he's put out so much material he is making his music sound exactly the way he wants it to sound. I'm still not sure though why he wouldn't want his recordings to be better, clearer, punchier, more texturally rich, especially given he seemed to be a lot more ambitious with the instrumentation and the vocal guests on this one. I mean, I'm sure there are a ton of very talented producers who would give their left nut to be on a Thundercat record. I suppose this album is not as shoddily put together as Apocalypse was. It's not nearly as cumbersome as Drunk either, but still lands in the middle, despite its compositional shining moments and its more impressive songs. I'm feeling a decent 2 strong 6 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Thundercat, forever.